welcome to Faith and Fabric. I am Jen Frost and I'm excited to join you today for a very special outdoor sewing project. Now today we are going to be converting this table over to being a poker table. My brother is getting married this coming weekend and he's having his bachelor party here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a bunch of guys over. They're going to be playing some outdoor poker. So living here in San Diego, the weather is so nice. We want to set it up so the guys can come outside. So thank you for joining me today as we convert this table to be a poker space. So once your table is all clean, you're ready to start measuring for your felt. Now, grab your measuring tape and we're gonna be taking our dimensions. Now my table is a circle table, so obviously it's gonna be slightly different if you have a square table, but your measurements will still be the same. If you have a square or rectangular table, you're gonna wanna take the length and the width. You'll be measuring, using that as your base measurement. For me, because I have a circular table, I just need to measure once. So grab your measuring tape and check your table. So you're going to start on one side, you're just going to go straight to the other. So in my case, my table is 52 inches across the diameter. So I'm going to want to add about 8 inches to each side. So I'm going to take 52 plus 8 plus 8 more. So 52 and 8 is 60. Add another 8 inches to that. So that's going to be 68 inches. So that's going to be how long I want to make my fabric, my felt. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to cover the tabletop with the felt and then have it be able to tuck underneath. And we'll be using elastic as a base on the inside. That's what's going to make this so easy, is after we cut the shell, cut the top portion of our felt, we'll be sewing just a little hem all along the edges, feeding elastic through that, that little hem that we created, that seam. And then by tightening that elastic, that'll kind of create almost like a shower cap, and be able to put it over your table to keep it nice and tight, yet it'll be super easy to remove. So how's your measuring going? What did your measurements come out to be? Let me know in the comments. Now that you have your felt measurements written down somewhere safe, we're going to talk a little bit about the first layer that's going to go on our table, and that's going to be a layer of thin batting. Now, if you quilt often, you're probably going to have a lot of batting. This is my gigantic roll of batting. I will pop a link to this below. I love having this on hand. I use it so often. This is a very low loft, thin batting. To be honest, this isn't much thicker than felt. But what this is going to do by putting this down first on my table, I'll be creating a surface that's a little bit softer and smoother, especially because my table, I know it's a little hard to see in this video, it's a metal table and it's latticed. So if we just put a piece of felt down there, what's going to happen is those poker chips are not going to slide as easy because they're going to hit some of those ridges. So I want to create a base layer. Now let's talk a little bit about how we're going to be constructing this today. So you'll see here in this diagram, I'll be first using my table as my bottom layer. I'll be putting a layer of this batting, very thin, that is just going to be the diameter of the table itself. In my case, that was 52 inches all the way around. You have your measurements on your hand, so you are able to go ahead and you can, use those when you need to figure out the size of your batting. The top layer obviously is going to be that felt, which is going to have that 8 inches added to each side. So let's go ahead and start cutting this. Now, this is going to come down to how accurate you want to make yours. You can go ahead and you can grab a gigantic compass or make a gigantic compass. I'll actually pop a link right here to how I made a little compass one time, just using some of the tools I had on hand. Or you can honestly, what's probably easiest is just take your felt, you're gonna lay it across the top of your table and you're gonna cut it just to those dimensions of your table. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we've got our base layer done. And I definitely hope you didn't spend too much time. This is an easy summer project to work on. So you want to be able to just, do a quick cut all the way around. Now you'll see I added, as shown in that diagram, about an extra 2 inches on the sides. And what that does is that gave me that ability to have it roll over the edges. You can see a little bit here how it just tucks over the top. You think about, especially with this table being metal, the guys are going to be leaning into it, they're going to be bumping into it. I didn't want to cut this so that it ended right at the edge of the table. I did want it to overlap a little bit, okay? So our next step now is going to be to work on the top fabric. Now you have your felt. You've either picked the wool felt because you are a very avid player, or you have picked the acrylic felt because you're just a casual player like we are. This is going to be the next layer we're going to add. Let's segue for a minute and talk about how to do this if you're making a permanent table. Now, if you're making a permanent table and you have one of those great square card top tables, you are definitely going to want to cut your bottom felt to be able to overlap. A lot of times too, those card tables that come, the four players, 2 on each side, they often already have a softer top. So you may be able to even do without cutting this bottom layer of batting. What you will need, obviously, is your staple gun, because whereas we are going to be sewing this to make it almost, again, I like to use the example of a shower cap because it's that same concept of creating that tension with the elastic. We're going to be doing that on this one, but if you have a permanent table, you can just take that felt that you've purchased and you can go ahead and just staple gun it to the bottom. And again, it'll be up to you to decide if you want to keep using the batting to add that softer layer, or if your table is soft enough already without it. So in terms of adding the felt, we're going to be following a similar process as we did for the batting. I'm going to open this up. Again, you can purchase this by the yard. It's quite a wide width, so you will probably be able to get away, depending on the size of your table, with just the width of yours. Mine is very wide. I can't even remember how wide it was, but it definitely exceeded the roughly 60 inches that I needed. So I'm going to go ahead and throw mine down and trim around the edges, again using roughly an 8-inch overlap so it can hang down, again creating that shower cap part, that part that's going to tuck underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and trim mine up, and you can go ahead and trim yours up too. See, I promised you this was an easy summer project. So now you have your bottom cut, you have that batting underneath. Again, it's going to be up to you if you decide that you want to stitch it down or spray baste it down, or however you would like to do that. You also have your felt on the top. So now it's time to actually start the sewing. Now that was a great rough cut. Again, I just went around roughly 8 inches all the way around. Again, thinking of that shower cap example. We're going to now head to the sewing room and we're going to put in our hem. So just a quick preview, you're going to be taking your edge, folding it up. I'm going to go a little over 1 inch because I really want to have a lot of room. Since I'm going to put that elastic pulling pretty tight, I'm going to use a nice straight stitch around. I might even go back and zigzag it just to really keep it down, and then we'll leave some space to feed that elastic through. Let's start sewing. So let's get started sewing. Now you'll see my fabric does not have any kind of print on it. It is gray on both sides, so it doesn't matter which side I fold in. If you do have a felt that has a print, you want to put your print down and then fold so you would see your print here, and this would be the inside. This is going to be the bottom of the table, so folding it in. So you're going to start, you'll see I'm folding it at about 1.5 inches. Again, this is an easy summer sewing project. We're not worried about exact measurements here. We're going to get started. You do want to make sure you put a locking stitch on here. I've got my AccuFeed foot, I've got my stitch set to back stitch a little bit, and we're going to go all the way around. Now I'm going to keep almost a full inch in this space here, and then I'll have, roughly 1/2 inch over here. This is going to be super straightforward sewing. You're just going to be going all the way around. You will notice, and I'll show you in a moment, we are going to have to put just a few little tucked darts in because my table is a circle. I'm going to need to be pinching the fabric in a little bit here and there. So let's get started. So we're starting here, we'll go back a little bit, and now I'm just gonna go all the way around. Again, keeping roughly an inch. I'm more worried about this side over here and keeping my space consistent. So I've got about an inch there. I'm less worried about this side. Obviously, I don't want it to get too underneath, but you know, because I rough cut, it's not an exact measurement. Again, we're just going for that concept of a shower cap over the table. So you'll see if I continue to fold here, what's happening right here, you can see how my bottom is flat and I'm starting to get a little bit of a pucker. And that's totally normal. That's because we're sewing on a circle. So you could just take it, you're gonna press it down and fold it, and you're just gonna stitch right over that little pucker. And that's gonna let you keep those little tiny seams as you go through. You know, if you're familiar with sewing clothing, folks call those darts. So we're gonna be making little tiny darts the whole way around our quilt. You'll see they start to form naturally and you're just gonna stitch right over them. Again, that'll keep this set like a circle. So let's speed things up a little bit. Okay, I'm coming to the end here. You'll see if I scooch up here, here's where I started. So I've got, you know, roughly about a 6 or 7 inch gap here. So I'm gonna come a little bit closer until I only have about 3 or 4 inches. Make one of our little tiny bullets there. I'm gonna stop right about here. You'll see I've got, you know, probably about 3.5 inches, and I'm gonna back stitch in place now. And that'll lock that stitch for me. We'll cut that. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some elastic and start feeding it through. So once you're done making that little tiny pocket all the way around for your elastic, it's time to now start cutting that elastic. So if you're like me, you probably have a roll of this laying around from all that mask making we did. This is a very thin elastic. So mine is, you know, it's only about 1/4 of an inch. So if you're using 1/4 inch elastic, I would recommend doubling it. You know, when you go through your measurements, well, I'll show you how to do that in a moment. You want to cut 2 pieces, and that's just going to give you that little bit of extra pull that you're going to need. You know, felt is pretty heavy duty, and you really want some tension. If you have a very cheap one of these, you may even want to triple it. Otherwise, you want to go with a thicker elastic, probably about 1/2 of an inch. And because we've left that full inch here all the way around, you can easily put even up to like a 3/4 inch elastic in there. So let's talk math. So I promised you this was gonna be easy summer sewing, and this is only the second time we're gonna really have to actually measure something and do a little bit of quick calculations. So let's take a look.
To determine how much elastic you'll need, you're first going to multiply the diameter of your round table by 3.14 to determine the circumference of your round table. You'll see in my example, I have a 52-inch table, which I'm going to multiply by 3.14 to end up with 163 inches in circumference. Then you'll see I only need about 70% of that for my elastic. So I'm going to take 163 times 70%, or 0.7, to end up with 114 inches.
Once you've determined how much elastic you need, you can go ahead and cut it. You'll see I've got my elastic now cut here, and as I mentioned, I'm doubling mine because I want to make it a little bit thicker. I also went and I attached a safety pin to the top of the 2 pieces. So this is going to make it very easy for me to feed it all the way through. So I'm going to feed mine through, and you can feed yours through as well. Now, as you're doing this, I want to give you 2 quick tips. One is, you saw I ended up putting the little tails in my mouth at one point. I didn't want to lose them. A much safer and cleaner way to do that is to go ahead and just pin them on here. So you'll see I'll bring this nice and close. I've just double pinned this using 2 pins, double pin, to just really make sure, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is after you spend all this time going through and feeding your safety pin, you know, all the way through that, what did we figure, over 100 inches, is to realize your tails got pulled through. So definitely stick them in your mouth, pin them in place, do something so they don't move. The second thing is you are going to have a lot of fabric building up. I mean, again, we're 30% short, if you will, of elastic on purpose. So it is going to start to bunch on you. So there are going to be times where you're gonna end up with one hand kind of holding this in place, and you're gonna kind of have to jiggle to straighten this out and to bring all of that bunching that's happening down here towards the bottom. Because you'll see I still have, probably close to a foot of elastic left, and it's getting harder to feed that through because while it's nice and smooth here, it's not really bunching yet. It's really getting runched here. So you're just gonna have to keep feeding and wrenching, feeding and smoothing that wrench out as you go all the way around. So mine was a perfect fit. Hopefully that 30% decrease was a perfect fit for you too. So let's finish this off. So I am very carefully here with all these pins going to pull my safety pin just out of that fabric. I'm gonna pull that tail. I'm not gonna let it go just yet. I always feel a little safer having that attached, just in case. You've got your end here that's pinned, so you can pull those pins out as well. And you're just going to attach these pieces of elastic together. Now again, I have 4. That's because I doubled up. So I'm going to just basically come here and I'm gonna stitch right here to attach these pieces. And again, this is relaxed summer sewing. You don't have to be super precise with this. Again, just think of your shower cap. It's okay if it's off a little bit. But I'm gonna come here, drop my foot down, and I am going to back stitch and forward stitch a few times here, just to really lock those in place. Okay, we'll back stitch again. Come forward, and we'll give that a cut. Okay, so you see I've gone over that several times. That's not gonna come apart. So I'm going to take this now, tuck it in, and let's go see how the whole thing looks. And there you go, a perfect felt tabletop, custom made for your table, ready for your next game of poker, that you can remove anytime you need. And what I really like about this, you guys, is, if this top ends up getting more use than I thought and it ends up getting really pilled, I can always just replace it very quickly. I still have that batting that's underneath that I can reuse again for the next cover, or use for another project if we decide that after a couple summers, poker isn't for us. So I wish you guys a wonderful rest of your summer, and I wish you a wonderful good luck in your poker game.